always a very special celebration. The 3 holy oils that are used in the church are blessed on this occasion. But for us priests, it is a particularly important and special day, because on this day we remember the institution of the sacraments of the priesthood, holy orders, and of the Eucharist. And the priests, on this day, it will happen just a little while after the homily, will be invited to renew their promises of priesthood. Jesus in the Gospel today quoted from the prophet Isaiah, and these words resonate with all of us. The Spirit of the Lord has been given to me, for the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the poor, to bind up hearts that are broken. Those words from the prophet Isaiah are familiar to all of us. They are the words adopted by Jesus at the outset of his messianic mission. They are the words when spoken by him in the synagogue, caused all eyes to look on him with fascination. Yet when he rolled out the text and said, "This text is being fulfilled today even as you listen," they caused fury and the desire to kill him. For the people of his time and his place could not recognize in him the one who was anointed. These are the words which are at the heart of the mission of the Church. We are entrusted to continue the Messianic mission. And these words are at the heart too of priesthood. As the prophet Isaiah was sent, as Christ himself was sent, so we too are sent. Sent to the poor, the broken-hearted, to those who are held captive, to the downtrodden, to the blind. In the letter to the Hebrews, we are told that the high priest carries the blood of animals into the most holy place as a sin offering, but the bodies are burned outside the camp. And so Jesus also suffered outside the city gate to make the people holy through his own blood. Let us then go to him outside the camp, says the book of Hebrews, bearing the disgrace that he bore. For here we do not have an enduring city, but we are looking for the city to come. The words of Hebrews, the author reminds us that it is outside the camp that the lepers are to be found. It is the poor who live beyond the city walls. Outside the camp is the place to reject and be excluded. Going back to the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus, outside the camp is considered a place of uncleanliness. If you remember, the scapegoat, bearing the curses of the people's sins, was released outside the camp into the wilderness, after which he who released the goat had to wash and to run all his clothing to remove his uncleanliness. The outside the camp is to be a place that is unclean. C.S. Lewis, the famous author, in his essay called The Inner Ring, speaks of the inner rings that are found among people at different levels of the spectrum of society, in politics, business, whatever group it is, very often an inner ring. The inner ring of those circles of those who are influential, powerful, the decision makers, the well-resourced. And there's often a natural desire in young people to want to belong to that inner ring, to be accepted by the influential of society. But to belong to that inner ring always involves a price to pay, a compromise to be made. Because very often, in that inner ring, there is the expectation that those in the inner circle will look the other way at times. Being in the inner ring often means simply to go with the flow, not to question the status quo in order to continue to belong. But we are told to go where Christ is, outside the camp. To go outside the camp is told to go into the world, beyond the particular city and the particular people. To go beyond and outside the camp indicates the mission to evangelize. But it also means to go to that place of reproach, the place of the unclean. This is where we are sent as the anointed. This is where we will find the blind, the captives, the broken-hearted, the downtrodden. We are sent to the place where those who are excluded are to be found, the rejects, the vulnerable. It means going from what is comfortable into what is uncomfortable. Going from the consolation of the inner ring to the risk of what is outside. It is to move across the Tiber to be with those outside the imperial city of power and status. We should not forget who we are as church and who we are as priests. We are called to be where Christ is, to go where he was sent, to be with those who he was with. The lure of the enemy, the lure of materialism, of influence, of remaining in a cult, the lure of the cleanliness of the Holy of Holies, oblivious to the mission, is a strong gravitational force, pulling us to remain in our own created world of safety and false security. Ultimately, to be and to go where Christ went requires a state of poverty with which he lived, the poverty of spirit and sense of emptiness that enabled him to be fully obedient to the will of God and to accomplish his mission in self-abasement, of total self-surrender. The sense of poverty and inner emptiness arises from our relationship with Christ, since it is through that relationship that we can recognize the truth of who we are and to see ourselves without the blindness of the mask or the blindness of making excuses for ourselves. This is not simply guilt by which we become obsessed with sin and unworthiness, but it is a healing through recognition of who Christ is and through the grace which he offers us. The more we know Christ, the more we are aware of our own emptiness and our need for his grace and his strength. We are then able to say to God, the cry that comes from our hearts, "O God, come to my assistance." We all need to be still, to be quiet with Christ, in purity of heart, and in the sincerity of wishing to be where he is. We make many excuses of why we do not pray, or do not pray properly. But without consistent and sincere prayer, There can be no human renewal, a renewal that is necessary to make us more and more deeply compassionate, merciful, and forgiving. Renewal occurs in our encounter with Christ. And as Pope Francis says, in the encounter between our human misery and God's mercy, that is where we find renewal. Most especially we as priests. We need to remember to pray, to spend time with Christ beyond that which is obligation, to repent in times of sinfulness, to the occasions of hypocrisy or of indifference. Christ humbled himself in accepting our humanity, in eating with sinners, and in accepting shameful death for the sake of the salvation of all. Prayer humbles us in recognition of our own frailty and our dependence on the grace and the mercy of God. Through prayer, we can minister to those outside the city without judgment or condemnation. It is in our willingness to go with Christ outside the camp that we naturally form solidarity with those who go with us. For us priests, that means especially with our fellow priests. We are not called to be priests in isolation. We are called into a presbytery, a community of priests, ministering with the common cause of serving and building God's kingdom. We have a duty and obligation to support and to strengthen each other, different as we are. We are our system of religion. We are not two priesthood. The priesthood unites us to the priesthood of Christ and to each other. As we model our lives on the teaching of the Beatitudes, so we should become more naturally inclined to be less indulgent of our own shortcomings and more forgiving of the failures of others. Although I don't yet know you well, I wish to express my gratitude to all the priests of this Archdiocese for your ministry and your commitment to living your priesthood faithfully and honestly. May God continue to bless you and to be always close to you, especially in difficult times. I would also like to thank you, the people of God, for the support and the encouragement that you give to your priests. Without your generosity of spirit and your prayers, we would not be able to fulfill our ministry. So I say thank you to all of you for all that you do for us. For us all, Mary, the Mother of the Church, and Mother of Priests, is the example of one who stayed with her Son in his abasement and disgrace. Unashamedly, she stood at the foot of the cross, willing to be where he was and with him. She is the model of hope, who did not allow circumstances to cause her despair or discouragement. She saw beyond the present suffering to the hope of new life. May we too be so liberated in spirit, liberated from our sinfulness and from our fears, that we will never fear to tread and to walk where Christ walked, to abandon the lure and the ease of inner living, and to embark on the pilgrimage of hope that leads us ultimately to the fullness of Christ and his kingdom.